Apache girl was dragged through town for stealing, until a lone rancher did the unthinkable. Suspicion and fear were common, especially toward those who did not belong. Among these outsiders were the Apache people, who had long lived on the lands now claimed by settlers. Their presence made many in the town uneasy, even though most Apache families had no desire to cause trouble. On this particular day, the tension in the town seemed to reach a breaking point. A young Apache girl, no more than 14, was caught near the general store. Her small hands clutched a bundle, and her eyes were wide with fear as the store owner accused her of stealing. The girl's dark hair fell across her face, partly hiding the dirt and sweat from a long, hard journey. She had been alone for days, scavenging for food wherever she could, but her actions were misunderstood. The store owner, a burly man with a permanent frown, shouted at her, "You thief! You have no right to take what belongs to honest folk." His voice echoed through the dusty street, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. People began to gather, their curiosity quickly turning into anger. They were ready to punish anyone, to remind themselves that the town's rules would not be broken. The girl tried to explain herself, her voice small and trembling. I was only hungry. I have no home, no one to care for me." But her words fell on deaf ears. The crowd's anger drowned out her voice, their eyes hard and unforgiving. In moments, a group of townspeople grabbed her, dragging her through the center of the town. The sound of her feet scraping against the wooden planks of the street mingled with the angry shouts and jeers of the crowd. She tried to pull free, but her strength was no match for the men holding her. Tears streamed down her face as she stumbled, each step taking her further into humiliation. The children of the town hid behind barrels and crates, watching in silence, unsure whether to be afraid or to feel pity. Some of the adults shouted encouragement, not for kindness but for cruelty, their anger fueled by years of prejudice and fear. The girl's mind raced. She remembered the stories her mother had told her when she was younger, stories of courage, kindness, and justice. But now, in the middle of this angry crowd, those stories seemed far away. She wondered if anyone would ever help her, or if she was destined to suffer alone. Her small body shook with a mix of cold and fear, though the sun bore down on her relentlessly. Every step through the town was a reminder of how alone she truly was in the world. Meanwhile, a man on the outskirts of the crowd watched quietly. He was a rancher, known to few but respected for his quiet strength and his understanding of the land and its people. He had seen many injustices in his life, some committed by those he had once called friends. Today, as he watched the girl being dragged, something stirred deep inside him. He felt anger, yes, but more than that, he felt a strong pull to act. This was a child, scared and alone. No one deserved this. The rancher's eyes followed the girl as she stumbled. He saw the desperation in her eyes, the shame on her face, and the fear in her small body. He thought of his own children, safe at home, and wondered how he could allow such cruelty to continue. He understood the town's anger, but he also understood something more important. Justice was not always the same as punishment. Sometimes, justice meant protecting the vulnerable, even when it was difficult or dangerous. The crowd continued to shout and push, their anger growing with every step. The girl's small voice tried again, pleading for mercy, but it was lost in the roar of the townspeople. Her knees scraped against the dusty street as they dragged her past the saloon, past the blacksmith, past the children who watched silently from behind fences. Every step was a reminder of how powerless she felt. She remembered the few days she had spent alone in the wild, foraging for food, sleeping under the stars. Those days had been hard, but they had been hers, and she had faced them with courage. Now, in the heart of the town, that courage felt small and fragile. She longed for someone to step forward, someone to see her not as a thief or an enemy, but as a child in need of help. The rancher moved closer, his boots making soft impressions in the dust. He stayed calm, speaking only to himself at first. "This is wrong," he murmured. "She is only a child. No one should be treated this way." He could feel the tension in the crowd as they dragged her forward, their anger growing with each passing moment. He knew that if he did nothing, the girl would suffer, and he could not allow that. He began to plan, thinking quickly about how to intervene without causing a riot. He had faced dangerous situations before, but this was different. This was about protecting the innocent, standing up for what was right even when everyone else seemed blind to it. His heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. He would not let fear control him. The girl, meanwhile, struggled to keep her balance. Her small hands scraped against the rough wood of the street, her legs aching with every step. She could feel the eyes of the townspeople on her, judging her, condemning her. Her mind raced, trying to find a way to escape, but there was none. Every path was blocked, every escape closed. She felt trapped, helpless, and afraid, and yet deep inside a small spark of hope remained. Perhaps, she thought, someone would help her, someone would see the truth and act. As the girl was dragged closer to the center of town, the rancher finally made his move. He stepped into the street, his presence commanding attention. The crowd turned to look at him, their anger momentarily replaced by surprise. He was a tall man, strong and calm, his eyes steady as they met the eyes of those around him. "Stop," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. "Leave her be. She must be punished." For the first time, she saw a face not filled with anger, not with judgment, but with understanding. She felt a small flicker of hope, wondering if this man could really save her from the cruelty of the town. Her body, exhausted and trembling, clung to that hope like a lifeline. The townspeople hesitated. Some muttered under their breath, unsure of how to react. Others looked at the girl, finally seeing her not as a thief or an enemy, but as a scared, fragile child. The rancher continued to speak, his voice calm but resolute. "Justice is not the same as cruelty. You can punish wrongdoing, yes, but you cannot do it by harming a child. That is not the way of right." The crowd murmured among themselves, some still angry, some beginning to doubt the righteousness of their actions. The girl stumbled, but the rancher stepped forward, offering a steady hand. She took it, her small fingers gripping his strong ones, and for the first time in hours, she felt a sense of safety. The rancher guided her to the side of the street, away from the angry crowd. He spoke softly, offering comfort and reassurance. "You are safe now," he said. "No one will harm you while I am here." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of relief, not fear. She had been seen, and someone had chosen to act, even when it was difficult. As the crowd slowly dispersed, some still murmuring angrily, the girl and the rancher stood together. The townspeople had been reminded in a small way that compassion and justice must go hand in hand. The girl, exhausted but safe, looked up at her rescuer with gratitude. She did not know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a small sense of hope. The rancher watched the girl carefully, knowing that this was only the beginning. The town would not forget this event easily, and he knew there would be challenges ahead. But he also knew that he had done the right thing. In a world that often seemed cruel and unforgiving, small acts of courage could make a difference. And today, that difference had been enough to save a young girl from harm. The sun continued to beat down on the town, casting long shadows across the dusty street. But within those shadows, a small spark of light had begun to shine, a light of hope, courage, and compassion, reminding everyone that even in the harshest of places, goodness could still be found. After the townspeople slowly drifted back to their shops and homes, murmuring angrily and shaking their heads, the rancher stood beside the young Apache girl. She clung to his hand, her small fingers trembling. For hours she had been dragged through the streets, humiliated and terrified. Now, for the first time, she felt a sense of safety. Her dark eyes, wide with fear just moments ago, began to soften. The rancher's calm presence was steadying, and she felt the weight of her fear slowly lifting, replaced by a cautious hope. The rancher led her away from the crowded street, past the general store, and toward the outskirts of the town where the land opened into rolling fields and the distant mountains. The air was cleaner here, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and dry earth. Birds sang in the trees, and the girl paused, blinking as if seeing the world for the first time in days. "Where are we going?" she asked softly, her voice hoarse from crying and shouting. "To a safe place," the rancher replied. His voice was gentle yet firm. "You deserve a chance to rest, to eat, and to be treated with kindness. No one should ever face what you just did." The girl's small shoulders sagged, relief flooding her tired body. She had expected punishment, perhaps even worse, but instead she found someone willing to protect her. As they walked, the rancher asked her name. "I'm Little Hawk," she whispered. It was a name her mother had given her long ago, meant to inspire courage. The rancher nodded, remembering that even in her fear the girl carried a piece of her heritage, her identity, and her strength. "Well, Little Hawk," he said, "we'll make sure you're safe tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next steps together." Horses grazed quietly in the paddocks, and a gentle breeze rustled the tall grass. The rancher opened the door and invited Little Hawk inside. The smell of warm bread and cooking meat greeted her, and she hesitated, unsure if such kindness was real. "Come on in," he said kindly. "You must be hungry." Hesitantly, she stepped inside, her small hands brushing against the walls as she walked. The rancher set a plate of food before her, a simple meal of bread, beans, and roasted meat. She ate quickly, ravenous after days of little to no food, and the rancher watched silently, giving her space but remaining close enough to offer comfort if needed. As she ate, the rancher began to explain. "I saw what happened today. The town acted too quickly, and they didn't see who you really are. You are a child, not a criminal, and no child should face such cruelty alone." Little Hawk listened quietly, her mouth full, nodding slightly. She did not fully understand his words yet, but the warmth of them wrapped around her like a blanket. After she finished eating, the rancher led her to a small room with a clean bed and soft blankets. For the first time in days, she felt safe enough to rest. She lay down, exhaustion pulling her into sleep almost immediately. The rancher stayed nearby, thinking about what he would do next. He knew the town would not easily forget today, and some might still hold anger toward him for interfering. But he also knew that protecting the girl was the right thing to do, no matter the consequences. The next morning, Little Hawk awoke to the sounds of birds chirping and the faint hum of the rancher moving about the house. She felt rested, though still weak from the stress of the previous day. The rancher brought her breakfast and they ate together quietly. Afterward, he spoke gently. "Little Hawk, we need to think about the future. You cannot stay here forever, but we will find a way for you to be safe and cared for. For now, you are under my protection. Some will need to see your courage and understand who you truly are before they accept it." She realized that not all people were cruel, and some, like the rancher, could show extraordinary kindness even when it was difficult. The rancher, in turn, was impressed by her resilience. Despite the harsh treatment she had endured, she had not lost her spirit or curiosity. Meanwhile, word of the rancher's actions spread through the town. Some townspeople whispered in admiration, realizing that standing up for what is right required courage. Others grumbled, unwilling to admit that their anger had been excessive. Slowly, perceptions began to shift, and a few even offered apologies to Little Hawk, though she was too cautious to fully accept them yet. She had been hurt deeply, and trust would take time to rebuild. One afternoon, the rancher took Little Hawk to the edge of the fields, where the town could be seen in the distance. "Look," he said, "you see those people? They are learning slowly. Some will continue to judge, yes, but others will start to understand. Your courage today, surviving what happened, shows them a different way. You have more strength than you realize." The girl nodded, gazing at the town. For the first time, she felt that she might belong somewhere, that her life could be more than just survival. The rancher and Little Hawk continued their routine, and over time, she began to help him in meaningful ways. She learned how to care for the horses, mend fences, and even cook. Her laughter, which had been absent for so long, returned, brightening the ranch with warmth. The rancher often marveled at her spirit, realizing that a small act of courage, his decision to intervene, had changed both their lives. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Little Hawk asked the rancher why he had helped her when no one else would. He smiled softly. "Because someone had to," he said, "and because I know what it is to see someone in need and do nothing. I could not let that happen again. Justice is not only about punishing wrongs, it is about protecting those who cannot protect themselves." People could be brave and stand up for others, even when it was not easy. She had witnessed such bravery, and it had saved her life. In that moment, she understood that courage was not just for the strong or grown-up. Even a child could embody it in different ways, surviving hardships and learning from the goodness of others. As the weeks passed, the town slowly adjusted to the story of what had happened. They began to see the girl not as a thief or a criminal, but as a survivor, a young person who had endured much and had been given a chance to thrive. Little Hawk began to gain confidence, her presence on the ranch becoming a symbol of hope and resilience. People started to approach her cautiously, offering small gestures of kindness, and she slowly learned that not all humans were cruel. The rancher never sought praise or recognition. He simply believed in doing what was right, but his actions had a ripple effect. Little Hawk's story spread, teaching the town a lesson they had long forgotten, that compassion and courage could overcome cruelty and fear. By standing up for one child, he had shown that even in a harsh and unforgiving world, a single act of kindness could make a lasting difference. One morning, as Little Hawk tended to the horses, she looked up at the rancher. "Thank you," she said simply. The rancher nodded, knowing words were not always necessary. The girl's eyes, now bright and full of trust, spoke more than words ever could. She had survived humiliation, fear, and cruelty, and now she had hope. She had been seen, protected, and given a chance to live a life with dignity. The rancher watched her quietly, feeling a quiet satisfaction. He knew that the girl's journey was far from over, but he also knew that she would carry the lessons of courage, kindness, and resilience with her wherever she went. Together, they had turned a moment of injustice into a story of hope, and that, he thought, was a victory worth more than anything else in the world. The sun climbed high, casting golden light across the ranch. Little Hawk's laughter echoed through the fields as she ran to feed the horses, her spirit restored and her future uncertain but full of promise. The rancher followed her slowly, a faint smile on his face. In a world that often seemed harsh and unforgiving, they had both found something rare and precious: safety, trust, and the simple, unshakable power of human kindness.